So these are the hardest things about living abroad. Now, I am such a big advocate for going and moving abroad. I moved abroad nearly 3 years ago and it's the best decision that I ever made. I always push for people to try and move abroad because I think it's the best thing you can do. I really do believe it can benefit your life in so many ways. However, like with anything, with any big move, any big change, there's going to be negatives, and today I just want to talk about a few of the negatives about moving abroad, not to put you off it, but just to share the reality, because as much as you can live such a better life abroad, it's not all nice white sanded beaches and drinking beers in the sun. There is some negative points to moving abroad, especially I moved to Australia, which is so far from home. There is a few negatives. So the first negative point that I found is it's actually harder than I expected to make friends. I expected when I moved to Australia that I would have a whole new friendship group within a couple of months. But after living abroad for nearly 3 years, I can honestly say that I've only made a couple of close-ish friends. All of my close friends are still back in the UK, especially for me who's moved around quite a lot. I've lived in lots of different cities, so it's hard to make friends when you're kind of moving around a lot. You don't want to almost put the effort in a lot of the time when you know you're only in a place for like a temporary basis. But yeah, generally when you're settled in a city, it is hard to make friends unless you really go and make the effort. We don't really go out that much anymore. We're not big drinkers or party animals, so it definitely makes meeting friends harder because you've got to kind of actually force yourself to get out there. To be honest, I've just kind of got used to it and just accepted the fact that if I'm going to make friends, I'm going to make them. If I don't, I don't get too stressed about it. But it is definitely harder than I expected to make friends. I definitely didn't have the big friendship group abroad like I do back home. Me and the boys back home, we've known each other for years, and it's like you do when you realise to make close friends, most of the time you do have to spend a lot of time with them to actually get close with them. One thing that I have found living abroad is you're gonna meet friends when you're in unique situations. We did farm work, we did volunteering, stuff like that. Unique situations, that's where we've made the best friends. Generally when you're settled in a city living abroad, you do really have to put the effort in to make friends. The second one is similar to the friends thing, and it's feeling disconnected from people. This is disconnected from people back home especially. Now, one thing I can say is I've never really felt that homesick when living abroad. However, the closest I've got to homesickness is feeling disconnected from friends and family. Now this is kind of, especially my friends, I would say. My family not so much because I do speak to them on the phone. However, with friends and stuff, you kind of worry that because you haven't spoken to them in years, that the relationships with them are fading. And you do kind of worry that like when you do eventually see them again, if your like friendship with them is going to be the same, whether you're going to get on like you used to. And yeah, you just feel it, you just get a bad feeling sometimes when you realize that you haven't spoken to someone in like 2 years. It's like, oh shit, like it's a bit of a weird thing, especially because I had quite a close friendship group back home and a close family. When you're away from that for so long, you kind of do think, oh shit, yeah, like, are my relationships with them going to be the same? Luckily, I went back to the UK and it confirmed that nothing had really changed with that, which was really nice. Yeah, it's one of the downsides of being so far from home. Number 3, the next negative for me is nowhere feels like home. I've lived in quite a few different places over the last few years, and it's got to the point now where nowhere really feels like home. Australia did feel like home for a long time, and I do still feel at home in Australia. However, it's not my proper home. I only moved there 2.5 years ago. Like, it's not my proper home. Like, it feels like home, but not proper home, if you know what I mean. I went back to the UK for a visit for the first time in nearly 3 years, and like, that didn't really feel like home. It obviously felt like where I grew up and stuff. It was nice seeing it, but I could never picture myself living there again. In my hometown at least, that didn't really feel like home. And I'm kind of at a weird point now that if you asked me to settle somewhere permanently, I would be really stuck. The benefit for me at the minute is like, we can go and live in Australia for a year, we can go back to the UK if we want, we can be here in New Zealand like we are. We've got options and we don't have to commit to a permanent thing. However, if you were to ask me to commit to a move now, I don't know where I'd move. Nowhere really feels like home, which has a positive side because yeah, it's quite nice to just be flexible and see where we end up. However, it's kind of a weird feeling not having somewhere that feels like home. Number 4 is when you move abroad, For me at least, I've done a fair bit of traveling and working and a bit of a mixture. Generally the way we've done it is work for 6 months, a year, then go traveling for 4 months, work for 8 months, go traveling for another 2, 3, work, travel. That's kind of what we've done. And the biggest negative of that is, yeah, the traveling is amazing. And when you're working, it always gives you something to look forward to. You're always working towards something when you're going traveling. The hardest bit is when you've been traveling and then you have to start working again. It is so shit. Like, traveling is the best thing ever. And then when you've just got to go back to that 9 to 5, getting up for work, doing your food shop, that cycle, it's so hard to adjust back to that. And as much as it can be nice for a few weeks at first to have that routine again, very quickly we miss traveling. Right now we're in one of our stages of working and we've never missed traveling so much, especially after doing Southeast Asia last year. We've worked since we finished Asia and it's just like, we've never craved traveling so much. Number 5 is kind of specific to Australia and New Zealand and stuff, and it's that it's expensive. Australia and New Zealand are pretty expensive countries, and living here, traveling here is expensive. Australia's not so bad because the wage is so high, but things are still expensive there. Rent's quite expensive, food's expensive. Food in New Zealand, by the way, is crazy, so expensive. But just traveling them countries, traveling Australia is so expensive. Honestly, we were able to do 2 or 3 times the amount of traveling in Asia compared to Australia, because Australia is so expensive to travel. Accommodation's really expensive. When you're working there, it's all right because, you know, the wage is good, but it's an expensive country to live in, and if you're trying to save money, you do really have to get your head down and say no to a lot of things, and say no to doing a lot of activities and going out on the weekends, because it's just going to slow down your savings so much. So that is one of the downsides about moving abroad, is how expensive it is. And when you're at home, I don't know about you guys, but I lived with my parents back home, so if I was working, I'd pretty much save everything that I earn. When you live abroad, you got rent to pay, you got food to pay, you got bills, you got transport, all that kind of stuff when you move abroad. So you do really have to constantly be working in order to save money, which, yeah, can be a bit of a downside. So they are 5 difficult things about moving abroad. To be honest, there's not much more negative. I would say the list of positives is so much longer, so if you're looking to move abroad, I highly recommend it. But this video is kind of to share some light on the reality and just to show you guys that it's not all, yeah, amazing the whole time. There is definitely negative aspects to it, but that's the reality, isn't it? It's the same with any move. So I highly recommend you guys go and move abroad. Don't get too caught up on these negative things. A lot of them are, yeah, easy to work through, and a lot of them, like the friends and stuff, you just get used to when you move abroad. It can be quite difficult at first, but you just get used to it. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you very soon with another video.